We're actually, always launching in new destinations, and we start seeing trends evolve much earlier than if all we did was premium product. We see like what's up and coming.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Trends Podcast. This is your host, Dan Christian, and today we have a very special spotlight episode for you, and it's particularly special and meaningful for me, given that I used to work at G Adventures, and I have mentioned G a number of times on this podcast over the last few years, and today I have the honor and the privilege to interview one of the senior executives from G Adventures about the launch of National Geographic's Signature collection. Now, if you know anything about this company, you'll understand why it matters, because G Adventures isn't just a brand I admire from afar. It's a team, a culture, and a philosophy of travel that I have a deep personal affinity for. I've seen firsthand how seriously they take community tourism, purpose-driven travel, and using travel as a force for good. So when I heard about the launch of this new product line, I knew it was something that we had to bring to life on our podcast. And this year, more than ever, we are talking about transformational travel that goes beyond comfort and luxury and actually changes the way we see the world and our place in it. And for more than 2 decades, G Adventures has been a leader in exactly that space. Now, they're entering a bold new era with the launch of National Geographic Signature, a collection that redefines what high-end travel can look like in 2026 and beyond. Now, in today's episode, I'm sitting down with Yves Marceau, the Vice President of Product at G Adventures, to unpack why this moment matters, not just for G Adventures and National Geographic, but for the future of luxury travel itself. This new Signature collection brings together 2 powerhouses that have been collaborating for over a decade. On one side, you have National Geographic's legacy of exploration, science, storytelling, and education. And on the other, G Adventures with leadership in community tourism and immersive small group travel. The result is something that goes far beyond traditional luxury. These are experiences built around rare access, world-leading experts, deep cultural immersion, and a clear sense of purpose. The collection launches with 22 itineraries across 28 destinations, from Peru, where G Adventures had their start, to Southern Africa, to Japan, Morocco, Central Asia, Vietnam, and even Palau, a brand new destination for G Adventures. Trips range from 7 to 19 days and are designed for culturally curious travelers who want to learn, engage, and give back without compromising on comfort or service. Throughout our conversation, Eve and I dig into some of the big questions shaping the industry right now. What gaps exist in traditional luxury travel that today's travelers are no longer willing to accept? And how do you elevate accommodations and service while staying true to community tourism and local impact? We also explore what this experience actually looks like on the ground, from signature moments like restricted access conservation sites in Cambodia, private expert-led experiences in Morocco's ancient Medinas, and before-hours access to iconic landmarks, to journeys guided by National Geographic's expedition leaders and local experts ranging from biologists and historians to photographers, archaeologists, and conservationists. Perhaps most importantly, we talk about how these trips are designed to create value, not extract it. Every booking supports the nonprofit National Geographic Society, while community-led experiences from women's weaving cooperatives in Peru to women-led agricultural initiatives in Egypt ensure travelers connect meaningfully with the people and places they visit. This is a luxury travel reimagined, not just about where you stay or how exclusive the experience feels, but about what you learn, who you meet, and the impact you leave behind. We also touch on what this launch means for travel advisors. And so many of you listen to our podcast, and I can't thank you enough for supporting us the last few years. And you finally get to hear from one of the most incredible brands in the world. And you will hear today how this particular product line opens the door to new types of affluent, purpose-driven clients, and how the National Geographic Signature style could influence the broader luxury travel landscape over the next 5 to 10 years. You're going to be able to hear clips and highlights from these conversations on all our social channels, which you can find on LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube at Travel Trends Podcast. And if this episode inspires you, I encourage you to head to gadventures.com to explore the full National Geographic Signature collection and see how you or your clients can experience these journeys firsthand. With that, let's dive in. This is my conversation with Yves Marceau, VP of Product at G Adventures. Welcome, Yves. Great to have you on the Travel Trends Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance and share with the audience.
For sure. I know we just missed each other when I was at G. You joined shortly afterwards. Yeah, you're also Canadian, but you've been living in the U.S. for many years. I know you're based in Boston. Is that right?
I am, yes. And I moved to the U.S. 30 some years ago.
Originally from Montreal?
Montreal.
All right. So you got some difficulty there with what sports teams you support, but us in Toronto, including Bruce and myself, obviously we've got our Raptors, we've got our Blue Jays, we've got our Leafs, and you've got. I'm sure you have to have mixed affiliations between Montreal and Boston.
Yeah, I mean the only team in Boston that I can't support is the Bruins. I am a Habs guy. Like I grew up with the Habs. They're in my blood.
Absolutely, yes. Rocket Richard and the sweater. I mean, it can't. That is an institution. But
Guy Lafleur.
Of course, yes. I should have gone there, but yes, of course, we got that connection with hockey and Canada. But one of the things that you've been in the U.S. market for so long, and today, obviously, we're going to be talking about the relationship with National Geographic, and you are the VP of Product, and people obviously heard from the introduction there. And given my background at G, this is the first time that we've actually had someone from G Adventures on the podcast after nearly 2.5 years. I know Bruce Puntip is going to be on the podcast very shortly as well, because he has a new book coming out. So I'm thrilled to reconnect with a lot of my friends and colleagues at G Adventures. Many of our listeners have heard over the course of the last 6 seasons, I guess 6 going into 7 seasons, my affinity for G Adventures and all of the experience that I gained there working with Bruce and the team. And so the company has gone from strength to strength over that time. And the growth that you have seen in the last decade is just extraordinary. So I'm so keen to have this conversation with you and to bring G Adventures to life for all of our listeners. But tell us, Yves, a little bit about your background in the travel industry before we get into G. How did you get into travel? What brought you to Boston? And what was your journey up into the industry?
Yeah, I actually moved to the U.S. for grad school. I went to grad school in Massachusetts, not actually in Boston, in Western Massachusetts at UMass Amherst. And was not studying travel and tourism. I was actually studying education and started as a teacher. And I got into travel through teaching. So I taught in a small rural school district. I taught French. And I realized that most of my students had never been outside of the county they lived in. And to get them excited about learning French, I realized I got to get them excited about traveling. So I started doing an exchange program with a colleague in France and doing travel back and forth. And then, realized, wow, I like this traveling thing. Like this is fun. And one day, this is like just how things happen. One day in the local newspaper, there was an ad looking for someone who was fluent in French, had a background in education, and was interested in working in travel. So I applied. And this is when you actually, got job postings in the newspaper, not through online. And they called me immediately, and I ended up joining this company that did educational travel for older Americans. And I became the person designing these educational tours in France. And that was 35 years ago. And I haven't taken the foot off the gas since.
Oh, that's amazing. Your first day. Well, it makes sense, of course, given you're an educator, that you would then be able to, obviously you'd have an interest in foreign travel, and you'd have also an interest in being able to encourage people to learn and experience and discover these destinations. So obviously that is in many ways a perfect background for being the VP of product and the journey you've gone on. But tell us, when you got into the travel space, I know you were at Rhodes Scholar for about a decade or more. Tell us a little bit about that role in particular, because obviously you went through a lot of growth, I'm assuming, there as the Director of Program Development. So tell us a little bit more about what then ultimately led you to G Adventures and the role that you've been doing now for almost 12 years.
Yeah. So yes, 15 plus years at Rhodes Scholar. Like I said, I started as a product manager for Europe, most specifically France, and it was designing educational tours. And I had two key topics: food and wine, and World War II. Yeah. So quite interesting. And throughout the years, I went from doing France to doing other parts of Europe. Expanded into Asia, was promoted, and started looking at, how we open other new destinations. And very quickly, my expertise at Rhodes Scholar developed into new product development, new destination opening, and really kind of like, how do you innovate in the educational travel space? How I ended up at G is a great story, because G was actually one of our suppliers. So we did, we would sometimes charter or send groups on the G expedition ship to Antarctica. We did some work with the expedition ship along the coast of Africa on some repositioning cruises. And so I knew G. I worked closely with Bruce's team in Toronto. And, one day my contact at G reached out and said, Bruce is in Boston, and I think it might be worth you meeting with him. So I had my first meeting with Bruce, and within days I was sold that G was the right place. And it was truly the time I spent in Toronto meeting with the executive team at G. They really convinced me it was the right place for me. The whole approach around community tourism, around changing how people travel, was really something that resonated with me. It was what I wanted to do at Rhodes Scholar. It's what I did. It's really discovering places through the people and not just the sites. And the opportunity to come over to G and do that on a much wider scale, bigger scale, was the thing that ticked and said, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I know that feeling when I first met with Bruce when I moved back from Australia when I was working at Lonely Planet. And of course, Bruce is very much a visionary leader. And I still remember, when we were working together, walking past a poster of Jake Burton at the airport together, and they had just implemented SAP. And he was like, when do you think we need SAP? And I said, well, they're nearly $1 billion company. He's like, well, we're going to be $1 billion company. And, at that point we were about 50 or 60. And sure enough, you guys are well on that journey now. So that gives, I guess, one example. And he's always considered himself very much a director of talent, of being able to find the best people and bring them into the organization. And he's certainly done that. It's been a talent factory over the years, and it's certainly been, I'm proud to be an alumni of G Adventures, not only to have so many amazing colleagues still there that are doing exceptionally well, but also the people that move on at some point with their careers tend to go on to do great things also, which is a testament to the type of people that come in the organization. So let's talk about your role and talk about G Adventures. And then I want to get into, of course, what we're going to focus on is the National Geographic Signature Collection, which just launched in January of 2026. But I want to also highlight the National Geographic relationship to start. But for any of our listeners, Yves, that are not familiar with G Adventures, would you mind just giving a bit of an overview of the company, the small group, the type of travel that G Adventures offers, which is what sold me on joining and what obviously brought you in, and it's why so many people love traveling with G.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we have a lot of different travel product that's available, and we've built a brand that's really unique in the world. But at the core, G is about community tourism. It's about the concept that when you travel, you can have a positive impact on the places you're visiting, on the destinations you're going to. That travel is a force for good. And done right, travel has a positive impact. I know we hear a lot about over tourism. We hear a lot about, companies that kind of keep pushing people to the same destination, or that, you hear like sometimes people talk about cruise lines taking resources out of countries instead of bringing resources into countries through traveler dollars. We are a company that's about supporting the locals and local businesses. We launched prior to COVID, we launched what we called the Ripple Score, which was meant to measure the impact that travelers' dollars had on communities and how much stayed local. We have our Planetara projects, our G for Good projects, that are meant to kind of give back and have kind of impactful experiences on tour that are more than just giving back to a project. It's about engaging with the project. So, that whole concept of connecting to the places and creating a community as you travel is what's unique.
For sure. And that Planetara connection couldn't be more important. I know it was still early days when I was there with Planetara it was already in place. However, it was still continuing to scale in its importance. But again, that's like way ahead of its time when you look at the travel industry today. And so now in terms of National Geographic, so obviously G Adventures is a globally renowned brand, and they have been able to introduce some significant partnerships, but I don't think there is anyone that stands out as much as National Geographic. I mean, National Geographic has a storied history. Everyone's familiar with with their very identifiable logo with the yellow frame, and the magazine, the history. And what's really interesting to me, and this is obviously your expertise, but the people who read National Geographic and the people that are connected to the brand, they are travelers. They are people that have the interest in travel. They have passports, and they have the means to be able to travel. And so it is a perfect fit, of course, for National Geographic and G Adventures to partner together. But tell us a little bit about that backstory and how that came to be, because I know what we're going to be talking about today is how you're taking it to the next level with this signature collection. But yeah, tell us about the origin of the National Geographic and G Adventures relationship.
So we've been working with National Geographic for close to 12 years now, actually. I know we talk a lot about 10 years, but it actually started way before. It was one of my first meetings when I joined G was to meet with some of the senior people at National Geographic to have a conversation about how we could work together. And they came to us. They were looking at, how could they enter a slightly lower price point in the market, and who was the best partner to do that with. And they identified G. They came to us, and it was like an immediate natural fit, as you said. It makes perfect sense for National Geographic, who is all about exploring, storytelling, digging deeper into the culture and places of the world. That's what we do at G. That's what we do with our travelers. So it was a natural fit. And, over 12 years, we've grown our partnership from, a couple thousand travelers to over 13,000 travelers this year, if not more, with our journeys. We expanded from just National Geographic Journeys to National Geographic Family Journeys. So we brought in family travel. And so when National Geographic was looking for a partner to handle the signature product line, it made sense that they came to us. They went to others as well. But what we brought was a new vision for the quote unquote luxury travel space. And it's something that really Bruce drove. Like his vision, was spot on with what we proposed for Signature.
And what I find so fascinating both about the G Adventures history and National Geographic, of course, National Geographic is 135 years old, but the G Adventures story very much tied to Bruce Poon-Tip himself and creating these small group adventure tours, which I still remember when we were doing one of our executive offsites, and Bruce had this concept and he took some of the executive team away, and we did this a few times, and it was always very inspiring. And one of the things he would challenge us on is like the pain points in the business and looking at other industries, where Zappos or Disney. And, I had shared with him the book Blue Ocean Strategy. And we'd gone to Vegas to look at Cirque du Soleil and understand how, their business model, this idea of, essentially being the business that you can keep replicating yourself. You don't have any natural competition. And one of the things that we were working on then was our core values. And what became incredibly clear to all of us in those meetings and discussions was the biggest reason that people chose to travel with G Adventures is that they were life-transforming adventures. And what I find fascinating about that as we have this conversation in 2026 is that, this is more than, 15 years ago now. And the company was already on that trajectory that was core to the DNA of the business. That's why people travel in small groups. It's why people want to connect with locals and they want to be immersed in the culture, and they don't want to travel on big coaches. They want to take local transport. And the types of people that take these trips are, teachers, nurses, coming back to your background. But the one last thing I just wanted to say on this is that 2026 is very much the year of transformative travel. You've got people like Joe Pine, who coined the term the experience economy way back in 1999. He's one of the inspirations of me to get into this industry. And I've had him on the podcast twice, and he's coming back again. He's such an inspiring, and also, he is very much kind of built the framework for this concept of the experience economy. And now his big focus in his book is the transformation economy, which, as I highlighted to him in my conversations, well, you just look at a company like G Adventures, they're already doing this. This is exactly like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization, the pinnacle of what people are looking for in a trip to come back changed and feel different. And to go on their hero's journey. It's like this is the brand experience that I chose to embark on from Lonely Planet to G Adventures. So interesting, that story, because I think that's where G Adventures working with partners, understanding that DNA. So National Geographic comes to you, and I guess this is truly the final part, and I'll pass it back to you. But I just hope our listeners find this fascinating, is because adventure travel was initially kind of more intended to be not necessarily budget, but certainly there was camping, and there was it was designed to be more economical. Like that was, and so this perception of adventure travel being active or even being kind of a rougher style of travel, it didn't necessarily appeal to people who were looking for comfort and the older clientele. And the significant change with the National Geographic partnership and what we're talking about today is luxury. And I know G has moved into comfort. They've moved into the idea of G Lux, and and worked with travel agencies to really highlight the luxury portfolio. And this is the next step in that one. So tell us a little bit about how, when you got involved then to start creating the product, you needed to move up market. You needed to make sure that people saw a G and a Nat Geo together, that this was going to be a premium product. Tell us a little bit about that, and then let's get into Signature.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. So yes. So when we started, this was when I started as well. We started looking at how do we create a premium product that doesn't go away from our core values or our core essence of what we want people to experience while they're traveling, which is communities, a little off the beaten path, not just about the sites and the museums and the meals and the thread count and the porterage. How do you create at a premium level an experience that's both authentic and impactful and benefits the local community? A lot of our staff, a lot of our CEOs as well, or our tour leaders, we call them CEOs, as you might remember. We're like, well, if we're going to start using higher end hotels, we're going to lose that impact on community. But That wasn't necessarily the case. What we found is if you do your research and you do the work, you can find locally owned premium hotels. You can actually help community projects upskill themselves and upskill their offering so that it meets the needs of someone that wants a little bit more comfort. Because you can go have tea with a family, and instead of sitting on the floor, you invest a little bit with them and say, let's buy some chairs and some cups. And all of a sudden, you've upscaled the tea experience, but you haven't removed the authentic nature of it, that you're in a family's home. You know, you're meeting the kids, you're meeting the family. They're making the tea the way they've always made it, and they share with you like how to make it or what their life is like on a daily basis in this rural village that you're driving through. You know, up until we started doing journeys, people thought that, you know, premium travel was all about seeing the world through a coach window or through a guide's perspective. We wanted to bring it and keep it real and not just be about the guide talking, but about travelers talking with the people in destination. And I think we achieved that. We you know, it took a while to get all the trips up and going. It took some research. We worked very closely with our partners at National Geographic to make sure that we provided opportunities to connect with the society in destination through projects that were either being funded by the society or experts that had done work for the society. We connected with them to create these unique experiences that at the time we called National Geographic Moments, that really highlighted the work that the society does in the world. And we managed to do it on over 80 trips. 80 different trips.
Well, that's what I was keen to ask you, is the destinations you have expanded to, because of course you launch a new brand with a partner. You focus on a kind of a core list of itineraries where you think people are going to want to go, based on the National Geographic audience, the G audience, and, you know, knowing many of the team members and how that process works. You know, it is quite fascinating to see how it comes together and then what the response in the marketplace and how it expands. So you got National Geographic Journeys, you got National Geographic Family Journeys, and you really go around the world with those itineraries. So tell us a little bit about how that product portfolio has expanded, and what are some of the top destinations that you found that really people respond to?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so we've almost doubled the portfolio since we launched it 10 years ago. And in terms of key destinations like that are popular, that kind of changes every couple of years, and you really have to have your finger on the pulse of trends in travel, and that's what's unique with us, because we have so many different product lines. You know, we have our youth portfolio, we have our classic portfolio. We're actually, you know, always launching in new destinations, and we start seeing trends evolve much earlier than if all we did was premium product. We see like what's up and coming, and so we're able to kind of go do our research, build our expertise with our, you know, youth product or with our classic product, and then when we feel that we're ready to bring in the premium product line, we go in and we already know kind of like where are the places that people are really feeling getting the best experiences, what are the projects that are the most impactful, so that as a premium traveler, you know you're going with a company that's already done their homework. It's not like their first rodeo.
For sure. Yeah. So you've doubled the portfolio. You have a clear idea who this customer now is, and continuously, obviously, you get that feedback. So you're evolving the product, the destinations, and now you have this new signature collection. So tell us, obviously, you know, I think you've very accurately described why this partnership and kind of then why now for this expansion. That's the part I'm keen to learn a bit more about, is, you know, that you've got, you know, this tagline that I really like, you know, far beyond traditional luxury. And so tell us a little bit about why the timing is right. And you mentioned trends, which is obviously this podcast. So that is exactly the reason that it exists, is because a lot of times it's trying to unpack why these trends are happening and trying to project them forward. And obviously the focus is long-term trends, demographic changes, consumer behavior changes. Luxury has been, since the end of the pandemic, a category that's continued to surge. And there's like luxury, there's ultra luxury. Having been at the Virtuoso conference and attended many luxury events, it's very clear that the market just keeps going up and up for these types of holidays. So I can see why it meets the moment, but tell us a little bit about why you guys decided to introduce the Signature collection for 2026.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen the evolution, even with our own travelers, our own product lines, there's an evolution for a traveler. Often you're younger, you're working, you're traveling as a backpacker, you're like on a budget. You get a little bit older, you want a little bit more comfort. You don't so much want to stay in hostel beds. You don't so much want to have to take the overnight bus, so you move to a classic travel style. You get a little bit older and you want to really make sure you have a comfortable bed every night to sleep in. But in essence, you still want that authentic experience. You still want to go into those villages. You still want to kind of go meet people. You don't want a sterile experience. You just want a much more comfortable bed. And we're seeing that in the luxury space. We're seeing where people... They want that luxury experience. They have the income. They're not afraid of spending. They want a really comfortable experience. They want to be a little bit more pampered, but they still want to have an authentic experience. And traditionally, that's been really hard to find in the luxury space. It's been really kind of over curated and over kind of like, I don't want to use the word sterilized again, but over kind of cleaned up. And what we noticed is people still want those authentic experiences, but they want it at a much more comfortable level. So I mentioned earlier, like going to have tea with the family. And I could expand that onto almost every kind of community experience, where sometimes you just have to think through like, okay, we can still have tea with the family, but let's help the family understand how they serve a different market, because that family, their business is connecting with travelers. That's how they generate some of their income. So how do we get them to think about it slightly differently? Or a community, how do we get a community that doesn't work with the luxury market to understand what they have to do to work with the luxury market? How do we create those components? And that's truly what we recognize and what we've been working on. So the reason why is we felt ready for this. We felt the market was ready for this. And so far the feedback we're getting from agency partners, from writers, from people like you, is that, wow, you're right on point. And so we're super excited about this launch.
No, and as you should be. I mean, like if you trace the journey, and this is where I really, I find it so fascinating, because when I joined, obviously I was very much a Lonely Planet, independent backpacker style traveler, which is essentially the G Adventures classic style of travel, kind of the cross between independent travel and being part of a small group. So you get all the benefits of being part of a small group, but you still have lots of flexibility. And I think that's what certainly appealed to me at the time, but obviously your life changes. I mean, we had kids when I was at G Adventures. I went on a Costa Rica trip when our kids were just about to turn 2, and they sat on our laps. It was a terrible idea, but nevertheless they did, because they were still free to fly at that point. And we did an adventure trip through Costa Rica. And since then, obviously, I've softened in my travel, and thankfully I've done well in life. So
luxury is something that I not only aspire to, but something I've had the privilege to travel in. And I like both. I'm one of those travelers that every once in a while wants to be able to rough it, but by and large, I definitely like all the creature comforts, and I definitely like staying in luxury. And I think, when you've got travelers that have been with you for many years, they've had kids, or they're now in their, they're in their 40s or 50s, and obviously retirees, which is a massive growing market. Half the baby boomers are retired. The next half are retiring in the next 5 years. And as we both know, long before this generational wealth transfer is going to take place, they want to travel as much as possible before they pass that down. So there's many reasons why the market timing is perfect for this. But tell us a bit about what some of the inclusions are, because I guess that's the part that stands out to me, is that there's lots of luxury options. So why National Geographic Signature Collection with G Adventures? I know that National Geographic is all about exploration, and that's one of the things. Education, expert access. You've talked about the community tourism and this cultural immersion. How do the kind of combination of those things make this particular style of travel so unique and so special? Like, what are the behind the scenes access you get, or sort of the expert engagement that really sets this collection apart?
So, excellent question. And I have a long-winded answer for you.
Go for it. Yeah. That's the beauty of a podcast. That's why I said to Yves before, I'm going to ask some long questions and you can give some long answers, because that's what our audience is interested in.
I'm going to start with just the concept of expertise, okay? And I mentioned that earlier. So one of the things we looked at when we were planning this with National Geographic is how do we highlight the localized expertise? Because traditionally, experts came from the US, the UK, and traveled with the group in destination. What we said is we are able to identify experts who are just as well known as who are leading authorities in their field that are based in the destination. And by looking at it that way, you actually create a deeper connection with the destination you're visiting. You have the same level of expertise, leaders in their field, but they're from the destination. So they're able to provide you with some insight that no matter how often you've been to a destination, you're never truly going to be, if you're in Egypt, you're never truly going to be Egyptian. You're not going to fully understand what that means and how that relates to an experience around growing up. So an example that I would give is, you have an expert archaeologist who's done digs in Egypt. They can tell you about the digs. They can tell you the history. You have an expert archaeologist who's from Egypt. He can tell you about growing up and finding these artifacts in their backyard, finding them when they were going for a walk in and around some of the digs, growing up with it. There is this innate, like, internal connection to the subject that as an expert coming from outside the country, you don't necessarily have. And that's the beauty of the approach we're taking with expertise here. It's really about identifying local leaders and leaders in their field that are going to be escorting the group throughout its journey. So that's from an expertise perspective, and working with the National Geographic, we're able to identify those themes and those local experts. We're able to work with the content that is related to the work that's been done by the society around research, around exploration, and really connect that with local people. From an exclusive access perspective, because we are present, and I mean, G is a significant player in most markets. Like you look at us in Morocco, we're actually one of the largest inbound operators in Morocco from any market. Same thing in Egypt. So we have the scale and the understanding of the destination. So we're able to work with our local teams to create really unique experiences that are not necessarily possible if you're just working with a DMC, or if you just work in one segment, because we discover stuff with the youth segment that we say, you know what, this is something, if we work with them, we can create a really exclusive experience. So I'll give you one of the really unique features. So in Morocco, we launched a new project last year with the community just outside of Marrakesh, south of Marrakesh. And it was a women's co-op. And these were ladies that were doing some basic weaving. They had a small center. Not a lot of tourists came by. Most of their stuff they would sell to someone who would sell it on the market in Marrakesh. At the same time, with our project Trees for Days, we identified a tree planting project that was just outside the same community. And because we had local teams, they connected the two together. And with the team, we were able to build a really unique experience. So our Trees for Days, if you're not familiar with it, is for every day you're on tour, we plant a tree. And the projects, the tree planting projects, are all over the world. So in Morocco, we work with the Atlas Foundation to plant trees throughout. But here in this, just outside this village, there was one of their projects, a tree nursery that grows saplings for fruit trees and olive trees. And the purpose of planting the trees are for farmers to replant fields of fruit trees or olive trees to create a crop for them, a source of revenue. The women's weaving project was a source of revenue for the women. We connected the two together and have created an experience for Signature where you're not only just going to go visit a project, you're actually going to go visit how tourism can change the trajectory of a community. And it's unique because it's only for us. We're the only ones who've built this. It's exclusive. And at this nursery, you hear the story of how the nursery is moving away from plastic like sapling pots to fabric pots that are woven by the women's collaborative. And again, we worked with them to connect them. And the idea is that you have a half-day experience in a community that's been curated, but it's driven by the local community. Like, we're not telling them they have to do this. We give them, the travelers, we give them the funds through travel to build this project and to build up their community. To the point where one of the leaders of the women's co-op just got her driver's license. She's gotten a car for the first time, and she's driving to Marrakesh for the first time in her life, and she's in her 40s. The impact this can have on the communities is spectacular. And, while we're there, they're going to meet a farmer who was part of the initial planting of the olive trees and the fruit trees, and he's about to have his first crop in the next year. And the impact that will have on his family, having a crop for the first time in 10 years, is going to be huge. The impact on the women in the co-op is huge. And the impact on the community is going to be significant. Like, I foresee that in 4 or 5 years, like, these ladies are going to be able to send their kids to college. These farmers are going to be able to send their kids to college because they have an income for a first time. And they're part of the tourist economy for the first time. Whereas tour buses used to just drive by that village on the way to the Atlas Mountains.
It's one of the things that really stood out to me is that when you look at this concept of transformative travel, it's no longer simply about like your own self-interest, most of these travelers are motivated by a greater good and are conscientious of the impact they have. And especially when you're traveling much more luxuriously, and you can see the difference. If you're sitting in a first class coach bus in India, for example, and you see the disconnect between yourself looking through the glass and the reality of the people that are living in that society, that's not the style of travel that a lot of people aspire to, or that, that they're seeking. And so the experiences you just outlined, the reason I think it's so meaningful is that ultimately that's what affluent travelers are also looking for, is making sure that there's a positive impact on the local community. And for me, of course, as soon as you mention, women's weaving projects, or I was raised by a single mom, so that instantly for me, I'm always advocating for opportunities for women in various societies when they don't have the same opportunities as men. For various cultural reasons. So that's always something that stands out to me. But everyone has their own, certainly most travelers, they can be motivated by different aspects of what's going to lift up a community. I know Tony Wheeler's still part of the G community. I know he was at your GX adventure. I loved working with Tony Wheeler when I was in Australia, because it was very much core to the Lonely Planet DNA. It's why they published a guidebook to Myanmar, because they wanted to make sure that they got money in the hands of local people, despite the fact that people protested the book because they were concerned that the military junta was keeping people down by virtue of controlling the hotels. But they decided to make a stand on that. And I know that's core to G, and it's interesting to hear how important that is to the National Geographic Signature collection. So there's a couple of things I want to make sure we jump onto. Obviously, I want to talk about who this product is for and how they buy it. But just before we segue into that, I just have one more question on the product side. And that is the portfolio that you have launched and the reason you have chosen the destinations you have. Because as I understand it, the standout destinations for the launch are Peru, of course, very core to the DNA of G, South Africa, Japan, Central Asia, Vietnam, Jordan. Jordan for all the reasons you were just very much highlighting. But tell us about the approach to selecting those destinations specifically. And I guess as it then relates to what I'm keen to hear your view on is who takes these trips. So tell us about the destinations, and then by all means, please just segue right into who is a National Geographic Signature traveler.
Yeah, excellent. So, listen, the product line currently exists and is operated by National Geographic directly. We are absorbing some of the destinations that they currently feature. That people offering trips that people have loved and will continue to love. We're not bringing back all of the destinations they had. We really looked at places where people wanted to go, that really had an appeal for this demographic. We wanted to have a global product line. We also are approaching it in a very phased approach. So we have our launch plan that's going to go over 2 years for this product line. Ultimately, we plan to get close to 80 different trips globally. For launch, we are launching with 33 trips. The team is always telling me that number's changing because of me, because I'm always like, well, what about if we did this as well? What about if we did this as well? So I'm always changing that number, making people a little bit crazy, but that's part of our DNA at G. It's always pushing the envelope. And we selected destinations where we could really highlight where expertise and community can come together and create a very special Nat Geo experience. We wanted destinations where there were stories to tell, where there was exploration to be had, where there was where we had for launch the expertise and the knowledge to really do it justice. Because while I talk a lot about community tourism and a lot about projects, everything is we had to be able to operate it at a level of comfort and a level of service that meets the luxury standards. So while you're going into communities, and I talked about how we can make it more comfortable to visit in communities, you still need to be able to get a bus that is going to be comfortable enough for these travelers, that's going to have AC or heat if you're in the north, that's going to have hand sanitizers when you get on, cold towels, water, that you're going to be able to find hotels and accommodations that meet the needs. So all of that went into how we chose the destinations. I mean, we have a couple hero destinations that I particularly like, and we have some new destinations that are going to be new for us. So Palau is one of the new destinations for G, and we've been working with a partner there really actively, who has been operating at this level, and was actually the same operator that handled the current trip to Palau through National Geographic. So it provides some consistency and some continuity to the experience. Central Asia, we've expanded the destination there to really offer kind of a more unique experience in Central Asia. China, I'm really excited about China because in China, we're actually going to go out to the Gobi Desert and experience the Silk Road, the Chinese Silk Road, before heading into Xi'an, which was the end of the Silk Road. So really, it was looking at how we can really merge all of these components we've been talking about. So in terms of who the traveler is someone who's looking to go just beyond visiting a destination at a super comfortable level, at a luxury level. They want more than just these, Michelin starred dinners and just these constant only exclusive visits. They really want to connect with the place they're going. They want to feel it. Like they are looking to be an explorer. And that's truly the approach we've taken with everything. Definitely, we expect North American travelers to be the majority of travelers the first few years. But because of our global distribution, we actually expect very quickly to see the traveler mix to look more like every G trip, which is, it's on every trip you'll have some Brits, some Germans, some Australians, Canadians, Americans, South Africans. And that's the beauty of exploring with G. And this is going to be the beauty about this product, the signature product, is it's not going to be mono-national. It's going to be multinational on trips. So you not only are exploring a foreign country, a new culture, but you're exploring it with people from different countries. And that really kind of creates an incredible community of travelers. And that's what we're super excited about, seeing that happen in the luxury space.
Yves, that's really interesting. And that's why I wanted to focus on the product in so much detail before we got into the customer, because ultimately a traveler is trying to decide, is this trip for me? And it needs to speak to them on many different levels. And one of the things I still very much remember from working with Jeff Russell, I remember all the highs and the lows, but one of the things that Jeff had said to me then that stayed with me is that, when someone's trying to plan a trip, it's the biggest decision they're going to make financially after a house and a car, but it's actually often more complicated because it's their time off. And so the idea that not only are you going to spend, a significant amount of your savings of money you've put aside to take that holiday, but you want that holiday to be special because it's literally the 2 weeks you get that year. And so it's a combination of those two things. So understanding the product experience is incredibly important. The most successful companies are the ones that stay close to their customer, really understand the product experience, because so much of this industry has grown by word of mouth. People love traveling with G. They love traveling with National Geographic by G Adventures. They tell other people, and that's how you get customers. But ultimately, understanding who that customer is and how you get more of them is the key to the marketing team, of course. And so when you actually think about who's going to be on the trip, and that's the next thing that comes along for everyone that's going on a group tour, is they then ask the question, who's going to be there with me? It's why we all had to have forums and places for travelers to post, because that's the first question they want to ask. How many people are going to be on this trip? Where are they from? And one of the big difference makers with international group tour company is making sure it is a global audience, that they want to know that they're going to be surrounded by like-minded people, but they're also going to be surrounded by interesting people from around the world. So you started to go into that, but let's just make sure that we paint a pretty clear profile of who is a National Geographic signature traveler. And really, of course, it can be a broad range, but likely it is someone 50, 60 plus, either, couples traveling that are retired. Some people obviously widowed or divorced. I know there's, one of the biggest trends we've seen is solo female travelers. And the stat that I always found fascinating that I learned last year when I was speaking at the Forbes Travel Guide Conference is that 50% of female travelers are either widowed or divorced, because you often think of a female solo traveler and you're picturing someone in their 20s or early 30s, but that's not often the case. So tell us a little bit more about when you're designing this product, who you had in mind, and if you were to close your eyes and open them again and you're on a trip, who would you be surrounded by?
When we designed the trips, who were we looking at? We were looking at people who were professionals, mostly professionals. Doctors, attorneys, professors, higher income earners, because this is a higher price point product. People who wanted on trip to not have to worry about the comfort or the logistics. They want to know that things are taken care of and that there's not going to be glitches. That's the luxury market. So, if for anyone who listens to the podcast who thinks all my talk about community tourism means that it's going to be a little less comfortable, that's actually completely false. It is going to be a very comfortable experience. So put all of the comfort and the service level aside for a second. The people these trips are for people who really want to experience a destination deeper than most travel companies do, in a way where they're going to feel that they develop a connection with the destination, but also with people in the destination. And in terms of closing your eyes and being on tour, imagine yourself surrounded by people that are probably within 50 to 75 years old, recently retired or at the peak of their career, couples, solo travelers, a blend of both. And we're talking people coming from the US, from Canada, Europe, UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, Germany, and having a blend of that would be representative that we see on all our tours. Our current National Geographic Journeys tours represent that same blend of multinationals. And the beauty with that is you're not serving a unique market. So you're going to have people who come with different perspectives, different kind of thoughts about the world. And the conversations you have at dinner are going to be much more global than just mono-national. And that's the beauty of, like, you talk about the 2 weeks vacation. You're going to be with people who share kind of that same worldview as you, because that's who wants this kind of tour.
And then let's talk about how they purchase it, because that's one other thing that's really important for our listeners. I mean, this is a B2B podcast. Many of our listeners are travel agents, travel agencies around the world, many of them who already sell G Adventures. I speak a lot of at industry conferences, of course. So we have, a broad B2B audience. We also have customers are listening to this, of course. We find that actually we're growing our B2C audience, interestingly enough, as people want to work in the industry, learn more about travel, and hear from experts like yourself. And so when you think about how this product is sold, and this is one of the things, it's, an adventure travel or a group travel is considered it's a considered purchase. It's high touch. It's part of the reason that there were concept stores and why the idea that you need to make sure that you have contact centers and sales teams, and that, there's a huge level of education and obviously a massive level of trust in this whole booking process. And sure, people also do book direct online. But tell us a little bit about how people book these trips and how important, I guess, in the grand scheme, are travel agencies and trade partners to this collection?
I mean, extremely important. I mean, they travel agents and trade partners and agency chains are core to selling this. And in fact, the number of travelers who book luxury is much higher with agency than it is direct. So it's going to be key for us. What I can say to any travel agency agent or any agent partner who's listening to the podcast is when you look at the luxury space and your choice of companies that you can book with, traditionally, G hasn't been looked at as a luxury operator. Like a lot of people might say, should we venture down that road? We've done our homework. We have positioned and we have built the product to be able to stand against any other luxury operator from a hotel perspective, transportation, meals, everything. We talk a little bit less about thread count and more about authenticity and experience, but the thread count is there. and I use that as an example because, we're using the same hotels in some places. We're using more different because we felt it was more local or it was locally owned and gave back more, but from an experience perspective for agents and their travelers, they're not going to be touching their luggage. They're not going to be reaching into their pocket to tip. There's no optional tours. Like, this is very inclusive and very thoughtful, and the logistics are managed from beginning to end. And so the confidence should be there. It's finding the right client who wants that authentic experience is really, for an agent, the most important thing. Like, if you have a traveler who's sitting in front of you and says, I really want to know and understand Nepal or Morocco, and I don't just want to go and have great food and see museums and have some exclusive experiences that I can talk about. I want to get under the skin of the destination a little bit more, and I want all of those other things. Then go with Signature. If all they want is just the thread count, and they can still come with us, but we are going to be delivering that under the skin experience a little bit.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that when you look at the luxury market, and you mentioned things like thread count, having been at the Forbes Travel Guide Conference, working with luxury hotels, and these are the questions that they get asked. These are the expectations of those types of properties. But when you look at luxury cruise lines, for example, I know Bruce Poon-Tip does a great job of this when he's giving keynotes, kind of railing against the cruise industry, given the fact that it doesn't contribute to local communities and obviously pollution and the environmental concerns, which are obvious. When I was in Galapagos recently,
we traveled on land, my family and I. We had the most magnificent time, and the number of people that thanked us for doing that, that we weren't just on a ship, that we're visiting for the day, and that no money flowed to the locals. We stayed in local hotels. We stayed in nice hotels, and we ate at nice restaurants. And the number of people that commented that how much they appreciate that style of travel, because it is a very small percentage of people that travel land to Galapagos, because it is, a beautiful place to see by the water. But there is an impact on the local community in terms of the travel style that you choose, as you well know. But the part I wanted to get to on this is that when you think about the potential for travel advisors that will now have an alternative to be able to sell a luxury product that is the National Geographic Signature Collection, I presume, and I think this is where you're going with this, is all of a sudden there is a product offering that they can share with their clients that wouldn't otherwise be in the G Adventures consideration set. But once you have the National Geographic Signature Collection, all of a sudden you have a product that they can sell, and you can bring those people into into the ecosystem of G and National Geographic. So tell us, in terms of being able to do that, obviously that requires training, that requires resources, working with travel agents is a major undertaking that many travel companies can't, they struggle with, or they can't quite, understand all the things that are involved in organizing familiarization trips or being able to do things like a GX event. But tell us how you guys are planning to empower these agents. What are some of the tools that you're making available for them, and additional training or support, so that you can really expand and sell this collection in 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, excellent. So interestingly enough, right before our podcast started, I was actually doing a training with our GPSs, our global purpose specialists, or outside sales team, because they've been asking, like, you need to give us more knowledge, more content, more context. Like, we're starting to work with agency partners and agencies. So our team in the field is out there working with our most prominent agency partners to develop training. And they are always available for any agent who wants to learn a little bit more about what's available in terms of support and training, to give them that training, to share the knowledge. And I would encourage any agent who wants to know more about this to join some of the training sessions that are going to be done. As part of our rollout, we are rolling out some training sessions with key consortiums. So it's going to be available, and we are going to be doing some fam trips in the next year with top producing agents from around the world.
That's great. I appreciate those details. I'm sure many of our travel advisors who are listening to this will reach out for more details, and we'll certainly finish off with that. But there's a couple more questions I wanted to ask you while we have this time together. And really, it's about looking ahead and your vision as to where this goes from here, because I'm sure everyone's got a pretty good understanding now. If anyone didn't know G, they definitely do. If people didn't know about the National Geographic, certainly they do now. And of course, the Signature Collection, the big development for 2026 and beyond. And given that you've been, core to G Adventures product, the National Geographic, and now the Signature Collection, and you highlighted to us that this is a multi-year rollout, and there's obviously a very bright future envisioned for this style of luxury travel. But there's a couple things I wanted to ask you on this. Is that, like, when you developed this product, what were some of the things that you're hoping travelers take away from these journeys beyond just, the high-end service and clearly being able to take some beautiful photos? What is your hope for travelers that have these experiences? I know I started about this conversation about transformative travel and come back feeling changed. I'm sure there's something that goes through your mind as to whether it's that hero's journey, or if it is the experience of connecting with others that people are seeking so much today from this style of travel. But yeah, what is the big takeaway you'd like travelers to get from a National Geographic Signature experience?
Oh, I mean, there's a few of them. I think the biggest one is, I want people at the end of their journey, their trip, their experience, to feel like they've really deepened their understanding of the destination they've been to, whether it's Egypt. And I mean, Egypt, it's the pyramids, it's the temples, but it's more than that. It's the people, it's the culture. And I hope that me and my team has been able to weave not just the sights, but the story of the place and a connection to the people, so that when they end a trip, they feel more connected to the place and the people they've met, but also to their fellow travelers on the trip, and that they really feel that they've made an impact in the communities they've visited. Because I think that's that's one of the biggest takeaway, that you feel that through travel you've had a positive impact on the world. And Bruce says that all the time to us, and that's why he started G, was to see that travel done right can be a force for good. I believe that 100%. And I think when we design our tours, we design with that scope in mind. Like, how do we make this a positive impact, not just for the communities we're visiting, but for the travelers, so that they come home and they go, wow, I never want to travel with someone else. I just want to travel this way because it was so meaningful.
And what do you expect or anticipate the broader influence this might have on the travel industry with the launch of National Geographic Signature Style with G?
I mean, I hope that other companies kind of look at our product and they say, you know what, let's absorb some of these concepts and ideals. Like, I've seen it with our other travel styles, and we never say, oh, well, how they're stealing. Like, we're like, great, it's good that travel is changing. That is ultimately what we want to see happen. It's one of the reasons why we never, with all our Planetara projects, we never actually make them sign an exclusivity agreement. We want them to work with others. We want them to expand. We want the impact to be felt much deeper.
And two last questions. One, you've highlighted some of the incredible experiences you can have, but for you, is there a signature moment or a specific itinerary that you personally can't wait for travelers to experience? Where's the Easter egg that you've put into these itineraries? What is that?
Oh my God, that's a tough one.
Give us one. What is the big standout that is like, if someone's gonna get online and book today?
I mean, I have to say, I think I have a lot of favorites, but I think my most favorite is going to be Morocco. And it's because we really have built something that's going to be unique, that no other luxury operator was operating a similar itinerary. And it's because it looks at Morocco from a number of different perspectives, and it's all at the great level. And then we end at one of the greatest hotels in the world outside just outside Marrakesh, the Oberoi there, was voted, I think 2 years ago, #1 hotel in the world. Yeah, and it's just the community components we fit in there, like around storytelling, around connections with the National Geographic Society, are just multi-layered. And I can say anyone who does that trip will fall in love with the destination and experience some really cool places.
Yeah. Well, I certainly look forward to hopefully having the opportunity to take one of these trips in 2026. I mean, the product portfolio, there's a number of destinations that I have not been to yet. So I was looking at some of the itineraries to see what stood out to me. And so...
Which one stood out to you?
Good question. So I am desperately keen to get back to Peru. And I've only been once, and my travel style to Peru, I loved my experience in Peru, but I actually want to go back and experience Peru with National Geographic Signature collection. So that's the one I went back to because I was like, the heart where it all began. And I was, took me a long time to get to Machu Picchu, but we took the train and I have an idea of what to expect, but I just loved that experience so much. But there's so much of the country that I haven't seen. And there was a number of standouts on the itinerary that was like, so that to me, I've been to South Africa, I've been to Japan, I've done Vietnam, and I've done Jordan. And so for me, it was like, going back to Peru. But Morocco would be a close second, I have to say. So it's but for other people who are having that exact challenge now, looking at the website, I'm sure, I mentioned it at the beginning of the introduction, but for those of you who are been trying to multitask here, obviously gadventures.com, but you can look up the National Geographic style of travel and the signature collection specifically. So it's gadventures.com/gx/signature, but obviously just use the navigation on the website. But what would be the ways for anyone after this to be able to connect with you, Yves, or to learn more about partnering with G, or to take a trip? What are all the best ways? What directions would you point them in?
All right, I'm not going to share my email because I wouldn't be able to keep up. But it would be to reach out to anyone of our GPSs, our outside salespeople, and they have no problem contacting me and asking questions. And I'm happy to arrange, anyone who wanted to really have a conversation. I'm happy to do so. And reach out to our PR department or our sales department, and they get messages to me if anyone wants to reach out.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Yves. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you. I mean, this is the first time we've had a chance to meet and get to know each other. It feels like I've known you for years. I certainly look forward to seeing you at some point over the course of the year, and wish you and the team every success going forward. But thanks again for joining us. Congrats on the launch of the National Geographic Signature Collection, and wishing you and the team every success.
Thank you. And I look forward to the success as well. And thanks for taking the time to chat with me.
Thanks so much for joining us on this special spotlight edition of Travel Trends as we spoke to Yves Marceau, the VP of Product at G Adventures, to celebrate and highlight the launch of the National Geographic Signature Collection. I just want to say a special thank you to Yves for joining us for this conversation and sharing all your insights. I think this is not only an exciting moment for G Adventures, but also for the future of purpose-driven high-end travel. Has the potential to really redefine what luxury travel can look like in 2026 and beyond. I also want to congratulate the entire team at G Adventures on this exciting launch. Whether you're a traveler or a travel agent, I encourage you to check out gadventures.com to explore the full signature collection and to learn more about these incredible journeys. And don't forget, we do post clips and highlights from these conversations on our social channels, which you can find on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram at Travel Trends Podcast. And we have one other very exciting bit of news to share with you too, and that is that I'm incredibly excited to welcome G Adventures founder and CEO Bruce Poontip to the podcast this year, where we're going to discuss his new book, Community Ship. I'm really looking forward to recording that with him and sharing that conversation with you. So make sure that you are registered on the streaming platform of your choice to be notified when new episodes go live. Thanks again for joining us, and until next time, safe travels.